Hey everybody, welcome to OND DND, the TTRPG talk show by Older and Dumber, where we help you guys, navigate your changing bodies in the fantasy world. I am your forever DM and lover on graph paper, Hunter, voice of Hunter Taylor.
I am hopeless romantic player, Joey.
And what we are talking about today is romance in TTRPGs and navigating in-game relationships.
Man, we had one of these in our last campaign. Good thing we'll have,
We've
an expert to talk about that today.
We would have, yeah. We can comment on it.
Oh, he's not here.
He's not here, unfortunately. We can comment on it still, and still, But I think the first thing we should talk about is, essentially, let's talk about the presence of romance in storytelling.
Mm-hmm.
We've seen the, girl next door, and the guy falls for tough to get girl, or girl falls for tough to get guy in like all stories, but there's the fanfare and there's the like point of the story kind of love and all that kind of thing. What kind of opinions do you have sort of on romance and storytelling? I mean, a couple off the top of my head, Gamora and Star-Lord.
Mm-hmm.
You've got Hercules and Meg.
Mm-hmm.
Spider-Man, Mary Jane,
Mm-hmm.
right? I mean, stuff like that, right? Go ahead. What do
You gotta have romance in there for the audience members that aren't there to see the punches.
Okay. All right. I see what you're saying. I mean, there's still action people who like, I guess that's just people who like romance and action, right?
Yeah.
But there's people who like just romance. There's people who like just action.
There's some people that just go to see Chris Hemsworth take his shirt off and chop wood.
There is.
And they don't care about the kissing.
Yeah. Do you think that all stories need romance?
No, I think you can have but I think you appeal to a larger audience if you do. But
Interesting.
It can not work in some stories too. Like a movie like John Wick doesn't need
He doesn't need to fall in love with somebody.
Yeah.
Yes. I do hate that when there's shows and movies that do that. Like, this love interest didn't need to happen. But then I feel like they have the mentality that you just said, where a romance will help you reach more broader audiences. And it's like, why though? Does it really?
Well, it's a product of the studio system too. They're trying to appeal to the biggest audience. All right, we need lots of action, big explosions. We need a huge special effects budget. We need romance, and this needs to be PG-13.
Right.
So that it can appeal to 99% of the possible
general
demographics.
the general audience. And you can tell too sometimes when there's a movie or a TV show or whatever. So like I just said, there's sometimes where you see it and you're like, this didn't need to happen. And you know it didn't need to happen, and you know it was bad. And you're like, this didn't need to happen. You could have not done it. You did it horribly. Then there's the ones where it's like, that didn't need to happen, but you did it really well.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, okay, it's fine. And then there's the ones where it's like, it needed this. You did it really well. Great job.
Yeah.
However, I can't think of any example where it needed a romance and you didn't do it. Or you did a romance that it needed, but it didn't happen. I can't think of an example of one off the top of my head. Can you?
Not really.
Can't think of anything where it was like, it needed romance and it didn't have it.
Right.
Which is odd, because we're talking about, you put romance in it, it didn't need it. And the opposite way around, you can't think of a thing where it needed it. So maybe it does need it.
Maybe if we had an expert here that was an in-game romancer, he'd have an example.
Well, speaking of how we need to relate it to TTRPG, what are the type of romances in a TTRPG? Well, obviously there's player to player.
Mm-hmm.
There is also player to NPC.
Mm-hmm.
And there's even, for some DMs, NPC to NPC.
Mm-hmm.
And we have encountered all of those before.
Yes.
Yeah. And I think that's what we're going to sort of talk about today.
Right.
So what do you believe, are some pros to just essentially romance in the TTRPG storytelling? What pros do you believe there is for essentially anything in a TTRPG.
I mean, it depends on your table and who's playing, but not everybody is hit monster, make number go up all the time.
Right.
All right. And people want different aspects in the game, and they want to tell a good story. And for them, a romantic storyline or plot hook might be a good story. Or maybe you just want to be the freaky bard that wants to fuck monsters.
It's funny because a lot of times when people do think of TTRPG and they think of romance, they're like, oh, you're talking about the bard wanting to, do it with the dragon. It's like, no, that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about like the real, so let's talk about some pros of it. It can be huge for character development.
Mm-hmm.
It can be huge for enhanced stakes, because there's the one person thinking, oh, I'm not going to be in a relationship with anybody in my TTRPG.
The DM's going to use it against
me. Because the DM's going to use it against me.
So Dark Edge Nightwolf doesn't have any romantic interests.
I have no emotional connections. But, and then it's funny because you can get a character like that, and then you could... The whole point of the character development is to sway them into having an emotional connection somehow, So what are some... Well, is there any other pros you can think of?
Dark Edge Nightwolf usually is the one that becomes best friends with Fartbuckle, and he winds up sobbing at the table when his friend dies.
Why are you crying? Shut the fuck up!
You don't understand!
I don't understand! Oh, man. Well, all right. Any other pros you can think of?
I mean, it's mostly for storytelling, right? You're on the RP side of things. Like for a DM, it does give you leverage to play with players' emotions and stuff. And it can raise the stakes too. If it's two party members that are together, you might have them have to make the ultimate sacrifice. And that has a much more emotionally charged impact if they're in a relationship.
Yeah. All right, so let's talk about the cons of romance in TTRPGs.
Your D&D group implodes.
Yeah, sure, yeah, but why? So you just say would implode? Why would they implode?
Well, you got to be careful. We've all seen examples of people who can't separate their character from them.
Yep.
And for that player, if they get into a romance with a different player, maybe they're feeling this is a real thing, and then your campaign implodes.
Awkward romance, awkward role play, right? It's yeah, like you said, the difference of not knowing what's real and what's not real, because we're playing a game, and that's another
telling a story, playing pretend.
Yes, and that's another sort of subtype of your con that you just said, which is, and I have heard this story multiple times from multiple different people, and they're like, our D&D campaign ended because the person running it just wanted to have a reason to flirt with this person, or these two people in our campaign just wanted to have characters that had sex with each other all the time, so nobody was having fun and it was awkward at the table, and Hunter and Joy kept having graph paper sex, so we didn't want to play anymore. But like that happens. So there's the awkward role play, the either one, it's too much, like you guys are getting too into it. Yeah. The only one of you is into this, and the can't decipher whether it's real or fake. Yeah. And then there's even the person who is trying to force the in-game player-to-player romance, who always is like, hey, and it's like, there's the one portion of that's a role-playing thing for your character, where you're just like a misogynist and you're trying to like become a better person, like that's your character development arc. And there's no, I just do it because I want to fake have sex with you, so yeah, those are some cons. What are the cons can you think of? We've started to talk about the role-play aspect really hard on that one, but what other cons can you think of?
I think it mostly boils down to that. It's, that player versus character interaction and
making people uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And that's a big thing, because in D&D, when people are uncomfortable, you lose your game pretty quick. And that's really going to be the biggest con, I think, for romance TTRPGs, is the uncomfortableness of other players. It's tough to... And a big thing comes down to... Communication. Every topic. Oh man,
the only time we could have done one of these and been done.
So, all right, let's talk about. So we've talked about the pros and cons for player and player. What are some tips or essentially advice you think that you would give for anybody, either one, trying to create an in-game player-to-player romance, two, people who need to talk to problem players, stuff like that. What do you?
So I think first it's setting expectations at your table.
Before the game even starts.
Yeah. Like, just put it out there and be like, are you guys okay with, romantic storylines or not? And that's the best way to feel it out. And the players that aren't, you have to check with them. Well, what if, player A is, are you still okay with player A doing this? Or is that too awkward for you? Maybe this isn't the table for you. If 3 people are into it and you're not, maybe this isn't the game for you. Which can be a hard thing to say to one of your friends, but at the same time, like, if you've got 4 people on board and it's hard enough to find a D&D table already, sorry.
Either be okay with it or you have to leave the table. Yeah, which stinks.
Obviously, it's not like you're forcing that person to stay and play
right.
either.
They
have to make the choice. They have to be an adult and they have to be mature about it. And I think that's another thing that you have to say with everybody is like, okay, if we're going to do this, here's some guidelines. We're all going to be adults. We're all going to be mature about it. Like, and we're going to understand that this is happening in the story and not in real life. So it's about pre-game setting all of that. And then I think in-game, it sort of needs to develop on its own. Like, don't go into it and just be like, oh, well, I mean, if you in character development are like, yes, we are a couple.
Right, before starting, then, oh, yeah, you already are a couple. That's just what it is.
But if it's like going to develop throughout the course of play, you have to let it develop naturally.
Yeah, you can't be like session 1, be like, hey, upstairs right now. Or like, hey, I kiss you. Like, whoa, excuse me? Yeah, that's the whole point is we're developing a story together, so... Yeah,
as odd as that would be, like reading you pick up a fantasy novel and read it, and then all of a sudden, like chapter 1, 2 characters that have nothing in common just start making out. It's going to feel just as weird at the tabletop.
Yeah. So player to player is probably going to be, it's probably the hardest to do in a TTRPG table, I think. Now let's talk about the next one, which is probably more easy. Again, this is essentially, always talk at the beginning of your game, get a feel for everyone's lines and veils. But this next one is probably a lot easier, but might be the most awkward. Potentially. I don't know. It really depends on people, but that's player to NPC. You essentially want to bang your DM.
No, it's not.
Wait, you're right. You're right. My bad.
Game.
Oh, see, I'm crossing the lines here. I'm seeing the blur. Anyway, the whole point.
When you sit down and play an RPG video game,
yes,
you're out there. You're building your relationship trackers.
Yes,
like that's a part of the game, and
yep.
The NPCs are sort of there to facilitate the stuff that isn't working with other players. So maybe like you're a group of rugged cis characters that are like, yeah, no, we're not. We work together, we get our gold, we go to the tavern and we spend it. Yeah. But the other people in the town, your rogue has eyes for one of the barmaids. Yep. That's why those characters are sort of there to fill out the world. Like, it offers a route to role play.
It does, and that's a big thing for NPCs. Now, obviously, a lot of that falls now on the DM's shoulder to create an atmosphere and characters for you to do that with. And that, again, becomes the whole conversation with your DM. Hey, I'd like to explore this avenue. What's available? Oh, I can make that stuff available for you, blah, 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 that kind of thing. But yeah, like you said, if you played any RPG, they all have relationship trackers on whether they like you or not, like a historian will remember this, like that kind of stuff, right? And that's why, they exist and they live there, so that it even comes down to the whole thing of the beginning conversation of, guys, are you okay with romantic stuff and player to player? And people are like, no, I'm not okay with player to player. Okay, well, are you okay with player to NPC? Because that is still romance, storytelling to see if people are okay with it. And I think most of the time people will be like, yeah, I don't care if you try and romance the NPCs, just don't be obnoxious about it,
Right.
you know?
And then that's going to be like, okay, how far does it go before it's like a fade to black, and
Yeah, exactly.
setting those boundaries. But I mean, you and I have explored, I think, every form of relationship between player and NPC.
Just about, I think.
We've had Griff, who was married already.
Yes, Griffin was married to the
half elf.
Yes, yep.
We had one night stands with Bree and Nashala.
Nashala.
We had rekindled romance with Turk and the sheriff.
Oh my gosh, I forgot about that. Turk and the sheriff. Yeah, and then just in our last campaign, Fick and about
everyone,
most of the people he met.
Yeah.
But one big one being Exor.
Yeah, which was like the first time we'd played out a gay relationship.
Yeah, and that was fun.
Put that one down in your notebook, guys.
And that one actually ended up being high stakes because you two ended up caring about each other a little bit, and then he died. He got killed trying to save you guys. Actually, yeah, that was. Still, I don't think we ever really talked so much about how Fick felt about that. We'll get there.
He's okay, though.
I'm sure he's okay now, definitely. And then Fick ended up with one of your crewmates at the end. Yeah, with Bristana, yeah. So yes, there's been a lot of, we have dabbled in the player NPC a lot. I guess you could almost just call it player to DM, right? Essentially, because that's the person playing your NPCs. But that gives you an avenue for many options, and stuff like that. And also, I almost kind of think you might even with games start with players being like, I don't want to do player to player, but player to NPC seems fun. And then they do it, and then the next game or the next character, they want to reach out and have a different avenue. And they're like, I kind of want to stop flirting with Hunter. Can I flirt with you? So there's that. But there's, again, you got to make sure you know that line, because there's another line too of essentially, because then you have things like, this is where we'd bring Carter in, where you have a group where in real life, two people are an actual couple, and in game, one of those people has a relationship with someone who is not their partner.
Right.
And then they get married and have kids, and that has nothing to do with their actual partner who's also in the game. So that's a big thing out of game and in game to think about as well. We went right back to player.
Oh yeah, I mean, there's that one, and Carter and I in Rob's game, were sort of flirting on and off.
Right, we never finished, but there was some on and off flirting in that one. Yeah, big time. That was Ziri and Farron. Yes, Ziri and Farron. I do remember that. Oh boy, we're at the end of the topic.
Oh my God, what's left?
Oh no, we started at 22. What's 40 minus 22?
I think I've got
that's 18.
I don't have the timer.
No, but that's 18. So we've got like a minute more if we want to say anything. Well, I guess real quick, we've sort of talked about comforts and consent and
that's big. Yeah. That's the biggest thing is like talking to everybody involved and setting up pre-game expectations. And then when it comes up in game, talking it out with everybody, and then keeping it on the tabletop.
Yes. Keeping it here on the table. I was going to say what sort of like risks, but again, we've even covered that and maybe what challenges there are, Oh, we didn't talk about NPC to NPC. We can sort of touch that really quick. And that's sort of just seeing relationships in games and seeing how those people interact with others in the world. And that's almost just world building.
Right.
But there is the fact of when the
players can influence.
Yes, influence NPC to NPC relationships, which people do in Animal Crossing all the time, don't they?
That's the whole game.
So
or Stardew Valley.
And that one's probably the most easy of the romances because I mean that's just you the DM kind of has already already builds whatever and
I think we've had examples of that in both our games. Like I had Tug and Six and their family in the Wasteland game that I was running, and then you had this new game, the Bright Flame. Was that that's just the name of the forge?
That's the name of the forge.
Yeah, but family that ran that business essentially.
Oh, you're talking about Hammer and Anvil.
Hammer and
Anvil. Yeah, they have a whole family. Yeah. And then there's Bosco and Flaxton.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a big couple for the first game. They are kind of so my muse for Bosco and Flaxton, Flaxton and Bosco. My muse was like Alora and
right,
and what's her face from Critical Role, sort of thing. But anyway, so that's our topic on romances and TTRPGs and navigating through that and stuff. Tell us about.
We could have went on this one for a while. I would have liked to talk about the Critical Role romances.
Yeah, so
we've got Jester and Ford, and
that could be a regular topic about big romances and storytelling. Yeah. Well, anyway, guys, thank you so much for joining us for OND DND. Please tell us about your in-game romances, whether they were good, whether they were bad, whether you wanted one and it didn't happen, whatever it is. Tell us your experiences, or maybe if you don't have a TTRPG experience, maybe you just have something about a story or a movie you want to talk about.
Something you wrote.
Yeah, tell us about it. We want to hear it. But anyway, thank you so much for joining us for OND DND, the talk show about the TTRPG talk show by Older and Dumber. Trying to help you navigate your games and make you maybe somewhat better. I have been the Hopeless Romantic DM, Hunter.
Goodbye, cuties. Hey there, dipshits. It's me, Joey, a.k.a. Slooty Mage.
I'm Hunter, voice of Hunter Taylor.
And I'm Carter, Eagle. We're
Older and Dumber.
Every Friday, we drop wisdom, humor, and a whole lot of nonsense. You won't want to miss it.
Become a patron today for as low as $5 a month. Get early access to all our episodes and exclusive behind-the-scenes looks at all the things we're doing and May's super secret editing notes.
Shout out to our awesome dipshits. Your support really helps keep this madness going.
Join the crew. Be a dipshit. It's an exclusive club, and you're invited.
So, dipshits, mark your calendar every Friday for a dose of Older and Dumber craziness. See you there.
Fade to black. On my stand. Fade to black.